The little kind of headline here is on-site is the new off-site. So where off-sites used to be, hey, everybody, next quarter, we're going to go to some retreat for 3 days. We're going to have an agenda. We're going to have everybody's going to be there. We're going to da-da-da-da-da, super intense. When you bring people together, you better have that kind of rigor, or else it's not going to be, it won't be worthwhile. It's just not going to be a good use of time. And so you can bring people, you can decide to have a 3-2, you can decide to have, once a quarter like Airbnb does, right? Their teams are mandated. You can work from anywhere, but you better come together for a week once a quarter with your team. I love that. You've got to have that time together. And so there is a real purpose for that. And just forcing people back to the office because that's how we used to do it is the wrong answer.
Josh, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
Hey, good, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. You got the scarf out? Is it cold?
It is cold.
Or is that just
sure.
a fashion statement?
Both. I am fashionably warm.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard that one yet. As well. I need a scarf. I live in the UK, but the UK doesn't it's not a big scarf culture. I know it sounds like a really random comment, but no one really wears scarves that much.
Yeah, I know you leave it to the French to, maybe it's an anti-scarf culture.
Anti-scarf. Yeah, whatever the French.
It's not like it's not that big here. I'm just, I decided a few years ago that that would be a good way to spice up my wardrobe. And I live in Portland, Oregon, and it's cold and rainy here, so it's
Fair
really
enough.
not, it's not hard to do.
It works.
Oh, yeesh.
It works. It works. No worries. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and sort of your journey to where we are now and the work that you do.
Sure. So, I started life as a brand strategist. So the first 10 years of my career were graphic design and brand strategy. I left brand strategy during a sort of tenuous time. It was my firm, the firm I worked for. I left, and it was the sort of global housing crisis. So I didn't have any place to go. I couldn't find a job, right? I don't know if anybody remembers that.
It's like 2008, basically.
2008. It was like exactly literally the day I stepped out of the door, the markets crashed, right? And so I was like, I had been working so hard to get job offers and da da da. So I had a little kid at the time, I had a baby, and I was like, uh-oh, I don't have a job. Uh-oh, I don't have anything. And so I had this opportunity. And I think this is a story a lot of folks that start companies during downturns say, which is like, there's no other opportunity. You're forced to do it. And so I had this chance to sort of think through, since there was no job descriptions, I was like, well, what do I want to do? And what I realized is that the most important work that we had done as a brand strategy firm was internally, and that a lot of the external brand work that we had done, these brand promises, they couldn't be delivered on. And so how do you keep those brand promises? You work with the people on the inside. And so I had this, after thinking really hard for about 6 months, I had this flash of insight around wanting to work internally. And eventually, years on, I learned that was called company culture. And that's really kind of how it sort of put me in the sort of the direction. I had started my firm being a brand guy. I came up with a name, Great Mondays, and decided that that's what I wanted to do. And so just kind of threw myself into it. I didn't have an HR background or organizational development background, and really started thinking through, like, what is it that how do we help organizations in this way? And what I quickly realized is that very few people had a really good definition of what culture was, and they didn't it was very fuzzy. And during that time, I was in the Bay Area, right? So Silicon Valley, like everybody would talk about culture like it was, oh yeah, sure, we've got a great culture.
We have a slide. we got a slide.
We got a slide. Oh, you went to the slide, right? I was going to say we have a barista on staff. Okay. You can get your laundry done. Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right.
The early days.
And it was like, you guys, you're missing the point, right? Like that was really a very, like, I was like, no, that's not what this is. Those are just perks. And so I saw a space to kind of come in and define what that was. And so I started working on this framework, which eventually became my book, Great Mondays. And now I have a podcast, Great Mondays Radio, and continue to run my firm. We work with hypergrowth technology companies, those that are want to be acquired or go public. Those are the kind of firms that are ready to invest in culture because it matters so much. Now, I will say it matters for everyone, but the problem is most people go, yeah, yeah, that's fine. Culture's great, but it's not a priority for us. And
Yeah.
it's not a priority until it becomes a crisis.
It's
And
interesting now,
then
right? Because like even investors are looking at companies' culture as a criteria, right? But
yeah.
that
Yeah.
wasn't a thing before.
That,
Now so it is definitely a priority as
you
well.
know, I'll sort of I'll twist your words a little bit and say culture has always been a thing. I know that you're saying investors never looked at culture before, but what I found in our work with companies that are acquiring or have been acquired is that if you pay attention to culture, the likelihood of success of your acquisition or your merger is going to be a lot greater,
Yeah,
right? So just like what we say in culture is you got a culture whether you know it or not, right? Whether you work on it or not. It's just a matter of whether it's serving your ends.
yeah,
So that's, I'm happy that all of a sudden, not all, I mean, I don't know, that now there's more awareness where it's like, hey, how are the people inside the organization? What does it mean? Is it connected? Like, do people, is this something that is this a place that people understand what they're doing and really understand how to get their work done? And that's
yeah.
ultimately what culture is about.
No, I love that, and I definitely can tell your background by how cool your designs are and your thoughtfulness. I just put those two things together, and I was like, oh, okay. This makes a lot of sense as well. I love to kind of I'd love to hear your thoughts on the current state of play because half my conversations now talking to CHROs. I probably shouldn't mention their name, but just spoke to a CHRO and their CEO's just said, hey, we're bringing everyone back to the office, right? And she's like, what does this mean?
Oh,
What does
yeah.
this mean for our culture? Are we going to see a decline in culture because we're going, because we are distributed? Are we going to see a decline in culture because we're coming back? It's kind of like a big conversation right
Right.
now. So I'd love to ask you to start there. Like, is there an inevitable decline now we've moved to a distributed world?
Yes. Well, so I think what you've just articulated, where it's like, I don't know, like if it's everybody's away and it's like the culture's kind of crappy because they're distributed, but then we bring everybody back and everybody's like, why are you bringing us back? It's kind of, it's like a no,
Can't
it
win.
feels like it's a no-win situation.
Yeah.
And the reason is because you're looking at it the wrong way, or we are looking at it the wrong way. So I'll start with this the trend that I saw coming 36 months ago, and we're now really starting to see it come to fruition, which is distributed teams. What most leaders are seeing is a decrease in innovation, efficacy, collaboration on these distributed teams. And these distributed teams, the reason why is because we no longer have the moments that are keeping us connected. Now, you might think that's fuzzy, that's nicey nice, like, oh, it's good to have a good, a friend at work. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you have a strong relationship with someone on your team, it is all about building that trust. And trust, as anybody knows, right, as Lencioni would say, or Sinek would say, trust is the fundamental building block of any team. And so when you don't have those opportunities to connect and build a relationship, strengthen a relationship, your trust is going to start to wane. So what the hard work that the square footage used to do inside the office, where you're like, oh, hey, Chris, how was the weekend?
Yeah.
That's gone, right? We know we hop on Zoom, and I'm sure everybody who's listening to this has this experience. You hop on Zoom, and it's like, okay, great, we're going to start point one, point two, point three. What are we working on? There's no opportunity to say, hey, let's just take a moment and connect. The the what we've already talked about is the easy quote unquote answer, right? Or solution is, well, this new way of working isn't working. Let's bring everybody back. Let's do what we used to do. That is also a fool's errand because the question becomes, why are you bringing us back? Like I can do my work just okay. And if the answer is only, well, to build relationships, the 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 calculus doesn't quite work because the commute is so difficult. And often when we're back in the office, we're just doing Zooms anyways. And
That's the
it
crazy one.
just that's
That's the one where I'm like, I've had family members and friends. Like, I go into the office to do a Zoom call, and those people I'm supposed to collaborate don't come in those days because they
yeah,
come in on other days because we have to be in 3 days, and it just so happens the days I go, those other people don't go on those days. So now you're just
yeah,
like, I'm just
yeah,
here
yeah.
for the sake of
And
it.
I suppose you could solve that with an Amazon style, everybody back 5 days a week. But while it's a company's prerogative, that is a losing proposition as well. We live in this digital world. We can do work remotely. So the number one like most popular request I get is to talk about this problem and help organizations solve for it without mandating everybody come back to the office. And so this new skill of having to teach organizations and managers how to rebuild these relationships while we're in a distributed world. That is brand new. Managers never had to do that before.
No,
This is something you have to add on. And so, in my book, Great Mondays, the six the fifth component of culture is rituals. And rituals I wrote even before the pandemic, right? It's how we build and strengthen the synapses of culture, relationships. And so ritual, understanding how to create and how to facilitate rituals in a distributed world, that's going to be the number one skill that managers need to learn in the next 18 to 36 months, because otherwise that team is just going to disintegrate. The relationships are just going to fall apart. And that is the crux. Now, I do want to caveat it by saying I do believe in-person work coming together is really important. It does not have to be 5 days a week, 3 days a week every week. You can create situations where you bring people together at certain times, and you've already you already brought up that challenge of
why?
I showed up and
Mm,
nobody else showed up. You got to make sure that everybody's showing up at the same
yeah.
time. And so the sort of the little kind of headline here is onsite is the new offsite. And so what that means is
Oh,
you
I
had
like that.
better have an agenda, right? So onsite is the new offsite. So where offsites used to be, hey, everybody, next quarter, we're going to go to some retreat for 3 days. We're going to have an agenda. We're going to everybody's going to be there. We're going to da 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 da, super intense. The When you bring people together, you better have that kind of rigor,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
else it won't be worthwhile. It's just not going to be a good use of time. And so you can bring people, you can decide to have a 3-2. You can decide to have, once a quarter, like Airbnb does, right? Their teams are mandated. You can work from anywhere, but you better come together for a week once a quarter with your team. I love that. Or you can do as my friend Tony, who's the CEO of medium.com, does. He brings the entire team, which, by the way, they're global, 100% distributed. They bring pay for everybody to come together twice a year, and they do a 3-day retreat. And it is so effective because it's able to focus the kind of work that they need to do. They need to make big decisions, discuss the strategy, and then by the end of the weekend, everybody has their tactics and they go away
But they also built
and
the
they're
relationships whilst they're there, right? They got to know each other. They built bonds. They built
that
connections,
yes,
right? That's the bit
yes,
that you're
yes,
saying as
yes.
well, right? It's got to be
That's
both.
Yeah, of course, exactly. You've got to have that time together. And so there is a real purpose for that, and just forcing people back to the office because that's how we used to do it is the wrong answer.
Share some of those rituals. Let's go back. So, what are some of those rituals that you share in the book that managers and leaders need to be doing to make this work?
Right. Well, in the book, I have a bunch of in-person rituals again because it was pre-pandemic,
Okay.
and those are those are kind of standard lunch and learns or days off to as a team go there at square. The square's office was downtown San Francisco in a really, really crummy part of town. They used to take the afternoon off and go clean up around the office. Everybody used to leave and actually clean up the trash in the neighborhood. I think it's a great ritual. So how do we then create those moments where we actually get to spend time together and purposefully, right? Because now it's like it's got to have a very, condensed meaning. We got to learn more about our colleagues. And so one of the tools that I teach now is something that I'm sure everybody's heard of, which is active listening. And so what you need to do is be able to, in order to get to know somebody, if you're able to ask a question and then withhold judgment and just let that person talk to you and tell you about themselves. Where have you always wanted to go? What kind of work style do you have? Tell me about a time you made a mistake and what did you learn from it? What's amazing is that you're not only learning, but they're feeling seen, and that creates that deep kind of connection. Now you can make it, silly, easy questions, and you can just start your weekly stand up with some of those, right? What was your favorite concert? Or you can go round robin and everybody can come up with a
So you
different
can still do
question.
this virtually, right? Those.
That's exactly right. That's why I sort
But you
of
got to
went
make
in and was
space
like,
for it. You got to be intentional. It's not gonna. Unlike the office where it happens spontaneously, virtually.
yep,
I'm assuming you tell me you have to be more
yeah,
more intentional about making sure it happens because you're not going to bump into someone virtually
it's
online. All
you
right.
have to do it. Yeah. So this is, I'll go back to the our weekly Zoom. You pop on, and as the manager say, it is really important that we stay connected. And so for the first, 15 minutes, we're going to talk. We're going to talk about, something that happened this weekend. We're going to we're going to answer a question. And those moments and opportunities, although they're less organic and may feel a little hokey once you start, if you can figure out a way to create some authentic rituals, and this is another piece that I do, which is like I can come to, so this is one of the sort of like basic structures that I bring to the table. But what I can do is I will have teams, I'll give them examples, and then I'll have them if tell me some ideas about how what's an authentic ritual for them, what are they going to do,
Nice.
and that
You
is
can
going
always
to be
crowdsource it, right? Rather than thinking you have all the answers, which is a
yeah,
mistake
no,
that many leaders and managers make.
that's right. No, I never, yeah, I learned that pretty early on. It's like I'm going to give you some examples and then you get to come up with. And it's like
That's
if
a
the
good idea.
team, yeah, so I was just at a Fortune 100 tech company doing this for one of their the legal team. And they have a bunch of groups that work around the world. And so some of them actually get together, and they're like, hey, we're going to do pizza and beer, and we're going to do it when we get together. And some of them were like, oh, we really love to travel. And so we're going to do like every month, someone's going to present a different sort of travel log of where they just went.
That's cool.
And yes, right. So it's like it doesn't have to be a big deal. The hard thing is actually making the space and deciding that you're going to have to do this. And we've just never done it before, which is why it's not an obvious answer. And that's so those, I would say, this in person deciding in person, like how are you going to bring together people together purposefully? And then how are you going to create those relationships in a distributed manner regularly, right? It's either weekly or monthly or whatever it might be, what's authentic for you. That is going to build those relationships, and the relationships are the synapses of culture, and that's how you're going to rebuild. And not a lot of organizations are doing this, and do not be misled by the data that's coming in that's saying, hey, your distributed teams are doing poorly, they're performing, their performance has been depressed. It's not that the answer is, oh, well, we'll just do what we used to do. No, let's push it forward and talk about how we might be able to solve the actual problem. And this is how I'll wrap this up. And I'll say, do not let the where define the how. Define your how first. How is it that you want to be working? And then you can decide when and where. How are
Okay.
you going to right? Like, do you want to be more efficient or innovative or collaborative? And then we can talk about, oh, well, it makes sense for us to do this, this, and this. Just because we know what the answer used to look like and we feel it, it's a human bias, right? We know it was the good old days, right? That's the feeling. It's the good old days. That's
Yeah.
what we used to do when I was a kid, whatever it is, right? And so that's the word of warning that I would give to leaders now is do make sure that you define your how first, and then we can get into the where and the when you work.
Yeah, I love that because then it gives you a foundation, a sense of direction, and during chaos or uncertainty or good times or bad times, at least you can make a decision from that foundation and not just react to some data that you just see or react to the fact that you used to work that way and that once upon a time did work that way and you have a knee-jerk react. And that's kind of what you're seeing with a lot of these CEOs and companies that are just sort of slowly reverting back to comfort because they're comfortable in that, right? And that's what they did. That's what they did for 20, 30 years, right? Because it's hard. It's really it's hard to do to be to work remotely and to have hybrid. It's really hard. It's again, like you said, many managers and leaders are never prepared or been trained on how they do this. This is something you did.
I didn't learn this in, getting my MBA. I didn't learn this when when I think about the model of a great manager. These are all the things in implicit and explicit learning opportunities. This never showed up. This is an entirely new model.
Yeah, no, you made me think about I was just thinking about some of those rituals in my own team, and I was thinking just really far back. What are some you maybe just gave me think, and I just thought of a couple I'll share, which I just maybe interested in or maybe not.
Yeah, love it, love it.
So
love it.
I used to work in like a really kind of high pressure sales environment. So imagine a sales floor with like 300 sales executives.
Oof.
You've got like 7 or 8 team managers. I was one of them, and I was managing like events companies. So I had a supply chain portfolio, oil and gas farm, and it was like cold calling, kind of like a super high pressure sales environment, right? And it was quite overwhelming. Targets, deadlines, everyone's got to hit their commission brackets, etc. And one of the things that I started doing, because it was high turnover as well, so it was hard to build real strong trust and relationships when that person may be gone next week. So it was tough. Yeah. So what I started doing is once a month, we had everyone in the team brought in food that represents their ethnic background and their culture. And we had a big feast. So we put it all on the tables and we sat together as a team and had a conversation. And AJ's talking about how his auntie made these samosas and they're the best samosas ever. And you kind of just get into these stories and you start to learn about people's backgrounds, experiences and journeys, and it kind of just bonded everyone over food, and it became a thing. We did it for like 10 years, like not exaggerating. And
food's a great way to do it.
Yeah, it became a thing. And then so that was one thing, and everyone was excited. Everyone really looked forward to every month, and everyone was excited to bring something new. And the other thing we used to do is whenever I felt like the team was a bit overwhelmed, I could sense it, I could feel it, like it's just a lot. Like there's that end of month deadline, everyone's rushing to do it. I would just tell everyone to drop the phones. And we'd all go to the shop, grab ice lollies and ice creams, and just take a walk around the block. And it's so random. And I remember, I used to get a lot of heat from my global sales director.
That was my question.
Right, because all of the other, exactly. Like, have they hit their number of dials and their KPIs? But I just kind of took the heat, to be honest. And all the other salespeople used to be really upset because they would complain to their managers that Chris's team was just gone out for a walk in the middle of sales power hour, right? As well. But the energy and that they would come back with after that 20-minute walk, it would all of a sudden we'll be closing deals. It's not even an exaggeration. I can literally directly see. That I just took everyone out of that mindset for a second. We all went for a walk, had a laugh. Everyone's like choosing the different isoles and whatever, right? We come back, everyone goes back on the phone, and all of a sudden there was this sort of level energy. And I do it all the time. We do it like a couple of times a month when it felt like they needed a bit of energy in the room. It's like, those are too silly. I say silly. Those are things that I just randomly did at the time that I kind of look back on now and think they were actually really important. And I've got a photo. I'll share it with you one day. I was going back through my old Facebook photos, and someone had took a photo of all of us holding our isoles up together. And there's a photo of like 15 hands of 15 isoles, and they've stood on the table and took a photo of it. And I was like, oh wow, like that's from one of the walks. And then we have another
Yeah.
photo where it's the whole sales desks, and every single one of my team members are standing on the desks with the phone trying to close deals. And it was just like me taking a photo of like my entire team, and everyone was helping each other because every phone had another phone connected, so you could help second voice and like guide each salesperson.
Yeah.
And it's just one of
Yeah.
those moments where I was like, wow, like that captured the essence of the
Yeah, it's like
of the team as well. So yeah, like, and I remember getting told off by my manager, like, hey, they're not your friends. You don't do that. You're their boss. You know, you're not their friend. Why are you
yeah.
doing
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
things? Right? They're not going to respect you
Yeah.
if you do you know what I mean? That was sort of I used
Yeah.
to lead with fear instead. And then I remember there's another photo. Last thing I'd say that the last ritual, there was a group of about 13 of us who used to train together after work or at lunchtime. We'd go gym and train together, and it became a ritual that we'd always work. In the summer, we would work out outside in the local park, and in the winter, we'll go train at the gym that was around the corner. And again, we just built relationships. We got to know each other about the families, friends, etc. And when you have a really hard time at work, you then dig deep and go above and beyond for each other because you kind of that's where
That's
that person's coming from.
that
So
is
yeah, I
that is
never looked at them as
exactly
rituals, by the way. I just kind of they
yeah.
just happened.
That is exactly that exactly what you want because it is you're gonna do so much more for someone who they may not even be your friend. It's just you understand who they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, even just imagine the difference between getting a rando phone call from some other person in the company being like, "Hey, I need this report." And you're like, "Who's this asshole asking me for, 5 minutes before close?"
Yeah, yeah,
But if it's someone that you know, and even better, someone that you actually have a relationship with.
yeah.
Hey, Chris, can you help me? I'm hustling on this thing. I really need to blah, blah, blah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to go above and beyond. And so I think the way you've just articulated that is perfect. And that is those are perfect exampons. I would have never been able to come up with the ice cream break, but
So
you
random.
came
And I
up
don't
with
expect
it. It worked.
the well-being people out there are going to tell me off for the ice cream break.
Well, it sounds like maybe you balance it with the workout. So
Yeah, it's true. But I think but also there was the mindfulness thing of just going for a walk.
yeah,
It's just the
for sure.
separation of just escaping. Even for me, it helped me. I think I needed it too, just to go for a second and escape. But when I started, because when I was a salesperson, because I spent 10 years at this company, it was me against my whole team. That's how my manager ran it. It was like
Oof.
you, Chris, against this person, against this person. I hated that, right? And it was
Yeah.
always like, and I moved my team to another floor, which was a big controversy in the company because I didn't want to be part of that culture. And one of the things that you started noticing is when everyone had, to hit X many sales per month, if someone was behind, people would start giving each other deals to get each other over the threshold so they can make their bonus. And then maybe a month later, that person's in need, that other person will, let's help so and so get above that. And that was like, even I was shocked as a manager to be like, I remember the team coming to me and be like, is it okay if I give? Because they knew that it was obviously going to trigger that bonus. And I was like, fine, like just don't tell the CEO to do that. And I was like, wow, this is great. And we had a vision board and a giant vision board, like it's huge, like 3 meters by 2 meters. And everyone put all their things they want to achieve. And everyone was helping everyone achieve what they wanted on that board, right?
I
And
love
again,
it.
like, how do you recreate that virtually? like,
Yeah.
like a virtual vision board, it's not going to be the same. I don't know. I don't know I don't know how you.
There are
Yeah.
here's what I'll say, Chris, is we all experienced at the beginning of the pandemic and the lockdown what was an inauthentic replication of an in-person ritual, which
Mm.
was, hey everybody, let's do a Zoom happy hour.
Yeah. It is
And it
Zoom
was
call, yeah.
so bad. You're like, the last thing I want to fucking do. It's like it doesn't work. And so I think that we could come up with some kind of way to replicate that vision
There's
board
technology. I've seen technology you can do
experience,
that. Yeah.
right? But what I will say is be cautious and aware that some things just don't translate. You have to reinvent And this is where it comes back to being strategic. What are you trying to achieve? What you did on those walks, what you did with the vision board, right? It is a break. It is, reinvigoration. It's, mental and a physical break. It is connecting with other people. So how are we going to do that now that we're distributed? That's we need to kind of go into the
Mm-hmm.
what is the output? What is the goal? What is it that you achieved by that vision board? And then once you've identified and written down that, then you can say, okay, what is the purpose fit exercise, structure, technology that's going to help us get to that point? And that's what I learned. Going, and I think we all learned going through that. It's like, this sucks and it's just not gonna last. So let's do something that makes more sense for us. And, we didn't know what we were missing. We just didn't have that, perspective. But now we understand that it's really about relationships and trust.
Yeah. I think it's also about the type of work you do, right? Like for me, my team comes in every Monday, but it's purely focused on content creation, product innovation, like creative work. We've got the big whiteboard, we're ideating, we're together, we're shooting content, obviously, so we literally do have to be together because we're in the studio. But trying to
Hmm.
do that virtually and come up with ideas and content and anything creative and based on like trying to disrupt our current products or offering, that in person there's sort of a magic that happens, and
Absolutely.
we always talk about how much work gets done. And actually when you're together, people challenge each other more, I've seen. Like people in the room are like, actually Chris, I disagree and I think we should try that. And then someone else in the room's like, and I don't know, for some reason on virtual it doesn't translate the same way, sort of this aha moments and these sort of, I don't know. It's almost hard to describe.
No,
Uh,
I do think in-person innovation, there's sort of this energy. I think there is absolutely valuable. It's valuable to be together. And last week I was on a call and someone described what they were doing with their team, which is interesting. Now I don't know if it gets to the level that you're describing, but it did what you're talking about and remind me of it, which is his whole team of 12. They keep their Zoom windows open all day. And so it's essentially this kind of like instant
oh my
access.
god, that's interesting.
Interesting. Just to think about it, because I also had that same reaction. I was like, no
I
fucking way.
get it. It's almost like you're sitting in a room with each other, like you're being in office. It's
And
just
then if you need to close your door, right? If you need to do some work, then you're like on silent or whatever.
that's
Or if
so
you're like,
interesting.
hey Chris, can I talk to you for a second? And you do a little
Oh
breakout
my
room.
god,
Yeah. I was like,
it's
you
like
know
a
what?
virtual window into each. Like
It's a
basically,
little awkward,
that's
but
what
it's
you
kind of
used to do,
nice.
right? Essentially it's just through the lens of a video camera versus someone sitting next to you. Yeah, it's
I
that's quite. I've never heard of that one. That's a
I
new one.
know, I know. I was
That's
like, whoa, that's really interesting. And that's like, I
is it
almost feel
mandatory
like,
though? That's the bit. That's the bit. That's the important question, because that's the equivalent of lack of trust. That's what message that would send if you said that you have to do that. It's like the equivalent of my wife's last company. I can say it now. She's no longer there. That they had like this software that tracked
oh
every
yeah, the nannyware.
yeah, basically. So, and if she didn't type a keyword or move a mouse, it would log out after a certain time. So your manager would know there was an hour gap where you didn't move a mouse. But the thing it didn't account for is we just had a baby. And guess what? She had to feed the baby, and her hours aren't going to be always the same because we have to, like it was. And
That's
I
terrible.
remember being in the
Yeah.
car holding the baby and her laptop, and she said every few minutes just move the mouse. I'm like, is this serious? So like, are we actually just so whilst we were driving, her manager didn't think she wasn't working, and I was like, this is insane. I was like, this is
Oof.
actually crazy. I was like, no, I'm closing
Yeah.
the laptop. Like, tell your manager that I closed the laptop.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not doing
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
anyways, but I love. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm interested to know long term how that plays out with the team.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think there's some interesting thing. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it's worth thinking through, right? You're like, oh, what is that doing?
That's,
There is something there,
yeah, I
isn't
know
there?
there is
Right? And you're
something
like,
there. You're right. You're
how do
right.
you do it right? Like, what is, and so I would go, right? So, Mr. Brand Strategist, I would go back and go, okay, what is that? What is the like? What am I getting from that? What is the goodness of that? And then can I replicate that in some way? Like, is this the best way to do
Do you
that?
know what would be
That's what I
interesting with
would.
that, right? If they're using Teams and it's linked with their calendars and it also looks at their productivity and you have the transcription, imagine the insights you can get from that.
Yep.
So you could really, because if it's there, like the AI, if the what do they call it, note taker is active during that day, this you probably could really look into that data and look at the productivity, the calendar, the meetings. Because what happens when one of them has a meeting, right? Or they have to mute it, obviously. So that's kind of, yeah. Anyways, that's a new one. I'd be interested in everyone listening right now what your thoughts are. Leave it in the chat.
Yeah. Right.
As well. But honestly, I love that point you made. The on-site is the new off-site. I love that because you would never
Yeah.
turn up to an off-site and be unprepared and non-intentional, etc. You are right. I've never heard that before. Listen, before I let you go, I think I can talk to you forever. Oh, firstly, tell everyone a little bit about the show, because on the podcast, so you've got the book, right? So everyone go grab a copy. Great Mondays, How to Design a Company Culture That Employees Love. So grab a copy of that. And the podcast is that you telling people's stories and journeys around the same content.
I do a different interview every week. So candid conversations with culture leaders. And so I bring in C-suite leaders and a veteran consultants and experts to talk through different specific ideas, emergent trends, ways
Nice.
that they are seeing things start to happen inside their organization. We had VP of Employees and Research from Expedia. I just talked to the CEO of Aurora, which is one of the biggest self-driving software hardware companies in the United States. Let's see who else I've had on executives from Autodesk and Facebook. My friend Tony from Medium did that whole episode about his offsites. That was amazing. So there's all manner of amazing conversations and insights, and I'm learning too. That's what makes this so interesting to me. Is like I'm bringing people on that I want to learn from.
It's the
I
same
want
reason I do
to.
this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, it
Essentially,
is so, it's like, it is such a powerful, it's like I'm able to engage and folks really appreciate asking, it's like, wait, how do you actually go about doing this thing? We had the chief people officer on from Simply Safe, or I recorded with her, and that'll be out before the end of the year. I'm not sure when this is going live, but before the end of 2024.
yeah.
And she's talking about how their brand message is all about the safety of humans and respecting of each other, and that brand is replicated internally in their culture as well. So we got deep into that and talked about their return to office and what does that mean, and how that respect piece. So it's Great Mondays Radio is an opportunity to really dig into some of today's kind of more progressive culture leaders. Sometimes they're, HR folks, sometimes they're
Yeah.
executives and others in other areas, but always we're talking about culture and culture adjacent
Where can
concepts.
people
And
check it out? Where can they grab, like, where's
anywhere you listen to your podcast. So most people get it on Apple Podcasts. You can also find it on Spotify. Those are the two biggest places. You can also listen to past episodes at radio.greatmondays.com. They're all listed there as well.
And
So if you just want to
what
go
about you
on.
personally? If people want to work with you, connect with you, where's the best place to reach you?
Yeah, well, so you can just go to greatmondays.com. I'm
That's a great
also
website. That's a
Thank
good
you.
domain.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Love it.
Yeah, greatmondays.com. You feel free. You can write to me, Josh at greatmondays.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. It's aka slash LinkedIn in slash aka
Right, we'll link
Josh
it below.
Levine.
It's all good.
Yeah, perfect. Oh, it's in the show notes.
No, right.
Speaking of
And I would say,
digitalization.
I'll leave Josh's LinkedIn below, and anyone who goes on there, make sure you follow his newsletter as well. So you also release some of the episodes and stuff right via the newsletter and stuff
Then
on
follow
there.
the page, follow the newsletter. Yeah, all
Yeah.
those things. We will send out summaries and captions of those so you can get a good sense of what's going on there for sure.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I'm glad we got connected, and I honestly love the work you're doing. So everyone listening, all those links will be below, to the podcast, to the website, LinkedIn. There's no excuses. Wherever you're listening or watching right now, click the links below. Go and follow Josh. And yeah, I wish you all the best until next week, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.